Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel where today I'll be talking about ranking all 7 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. I'll be giving my thoughts on the best parts of them and what I think are the lesser or maybe worst parts of them, and just kind of go through in chronological order, give you my letter grade for each of these seasons, and then rank them as we go. So let's go ahead and jump right into Season 1 or Book 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Water. So, keeping it simple here in Book 1, talking about the things I did like. Start on a good foot here. So, with what I did like from Season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I mean, the setup is absolutely perfect. I mean, the first 2 episodes alone by themselves are just masterclasses in storytelling. I mean, just before you even meet Aang, you already know so much about this world and you know the right parts of it. They're not telling you what you don't need to know just yet. And you're learning so much about the characters. It's just the perfect setup for an amazing world. And I mean, it's a great season. Honestly, this is probably the most fun out of any of the 7 seasons of Avatar. This is where you see a lot of really cool things like the elephant koi that Aang tries to ride. You hear about how Aang is just a kid, and it really is reinforced the entire season. And it's just overall a great start to a phenomenal franchise that I've fallen in love with. Now, that being said, there are a couple things that I don't like about season 1, and because it leans into the more fun aspect of Avatar: The Last Airbender, it tends to get a bit more episodic than other seasons of Avatar or Korra. You have episodes like The Great Divide, The Fortune Teller, or The Waterbending Scroll. A lot of episodes, although are important outside of The Great Divide, do feel a little disconnected. You don't see like anybody other than our main trio in the Fortune Teller episode ever even return. Now, that being said, you do hear Jessie Flower or Michaela Jill Murphy return as Toph, as she voiced Meng, fun fact. But you don't, like, nothing really important happens in a lot of these episodes. And so they can't be a bit more filler episodes and therefore be a bit slower paced of the show. So before we move on into Book 2, Earth, let's go ahead and do my letter grading for Book 1, Water. And to be perfectly honest, I give it an A minus out of a possible A plus being the best, and of course F being the worst. I give it an A minus. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm going to be pretty generous with these grades. There's not a failing grade in this ranking. Every season is great of all 7 seasons. They're all great. So for now, Book 1, Water is going to be sitting at number 1 because it's the only season we've ranked so far at an A minus grade. So let's go and jump into Book 2, Earth. So to be honest with Book 2, Earth, it's probably the most consistent out of all 7 seasons of Avatar. It is just great all the way through with episodes, of course, like Cave of Two Lovers, where you get, of course, Secret Tunnel, but you also have like Appa's Lost Days, the City of Walls and Secrets, and like Lake Laogai is like an unbelievably great episode. And along with that, with Ba Sing Se, you have 2 fantastic villains in Long Fang and the Dai Li. And they are just so cold in this show in a good way. Like, they're just so good as villains. I love them throughout. And then, of course, the villain of season 2, Azula, and how good she can be, and how, well, good at being bad she can be, and how menacing she is throughout the entire season, especially in episodes like The Chase. And then when it comes to my down points, my dislikes of season 2, they're more nitpicks, because there's honestly not a lot to dislike in this season. And so one thing I'll say is that because the first part of the 2-part finale, The Guru, doesn't feel like the finale, it can make the season 2 finale feel a bit short. And there isn't like once you like they get back to Ba Sing Se and like Iroh comes up to the door after Zuko gets thrown into prison, and that is really where the finale starts for me. And so in comparison to season 1 where they're in the Northern Water Tribe for 3 full episodes, 2 of those being the finale, and Sozin's Comet being a 4-part epic series finale, this one can kind of get lost in terms of it being short. Now, that doesn't mean it's not good. The finale is great, but it just kind of feels like it comes really fast at the end after it builds up. It just hits you out of nowhere. And to be honest, I can't even really think of another. This season is just consistently good. Now, for my ranking of Book 2, Earth of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'm going to actually have it take water. Obviously, from how I was talking about Book 2, it has to take water. And I'm going to give Earth a solid A. Like, throughout the entire season, it is just consistently great. And there's not, looking back at all the episodes, rewatching the show, it is hard to find anything to dislike about season 2. I give it a grade of A, right above Book 1 water. Now, the most important pro out of any of these 7 seasons. Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 3 Fire is the most important of any of the 7 seasons. I don't want to hear without Book 1, we would never have gotten any of Avatar. No, the ending is more important. Anyone can start a show. A lot of shows start, and they start well. Few shows end well, let alone end perfectly. And Book 3 Fire, the finale was perfect. Not a beat missing in the entirety of the 4-part epic finale of Sozin's Comet. And let alone halfway through the season, you get Zuko's arc, where he finally becomes good and opposes his father, goes off, teaches Aang firebending, but he has to be welcomed in by the team slowly. So they do that through great episodes like the Firebending Masters, the Boiling Rock, and the Southern Raiders, where Aang, Sokka, and Katara all accept Zuko into their group one by one, and it's so good, guys. Everything from Day of Black Sun onwards is literally perfect, and this leads into my 2 real nitpick of dislikes of season 3. In that, in the beginning of season 3, it kind of falls back into its episodic nature, and I'm really looking at 2 sort of 3 episodes. The 2 episodes that are really, like, to point out here are The Headband and The Painted Lady, and they're back-to-back, episodes 2 and 3. And The Headband, I mean, like, really? Footloose? I never thought I'd see Footloose in Avatar. It's just kind of, it feels weird. I don't think it's needed. They talk about, like, there being this secret river that leads straight to the palace, but they never use a secret river to lead to the palace. We were talking about the river of lava that's underneath, but, like, shouldn't Aang have known that it was a river of lava? They never referenced that episode ever again. It just, honestly, I feel like the headband could honestly be completely ignored out of the fact that they get Fire Nation clothes in the beginning, and you can just infer that if you continued into The Painted Lady, which is another episode that isn't really needed. She's never mentioned again, and none of the characters ever show up again. It's like The Painted Lady itself is also kind of, I don't feel like it's that important of a story, of an arc in this, or not saying an arc, but it's not that important of an episode, really. Like, you could probably skip the headband and the Painted Lady, go straight from Aang waking up on the ship in season 3, episode 1, and go straight into season 3, episode 4, which, like, you don't really need those 2. And my only other real nitpick about this is that once Aang and Zuko learn from the Firebending Masters what they can at the Sun Warriors Temple, Aang doesn't seem to practice firebending all that much. You get the joke that he's supposed to do, like, 50 hot squats and, like, 10 burpees or whatever every single time he hears, like, these animals croak when Zuko's off of the Boiling Rock. And as a matter of fact, you actually do see a little bit more if you were to invest in the Lost Adventures and Lost Tales of Team Avatar comic, where you actually do see Aang while Zuko and Sokka are off at the Boiling Rock doing these exercises, or neglecting to actually do these exercises because he's sick and tired of doing them. So you do see him practice, but within the show itself, it's like they go to the Sun Warriors, and then Aang, like 2 episodes later, is a firebending master, or at least competent enough to go up toe-to-toe with Ozai during Sozin's Comet. And so going into my ranking for book 3 of Fire, I have to, despite those nitpicks, there actually being more nitpicks about season 3 than season 2, it has to be first. It has to be first. At A+, book 3 Fire, number 1 in Avatar, goes water, then earth, then fire. So let's just go and kickstart with book 1 of Legend of Korra, Air. And one thing about Legend of Korra that it does very, very well is since it doesn't have a massive like season crossing arc like Avatar did, every season has to be its own contained story. And so they have unique villains for each season. And honestly, they have great villains throughout this show. And season 1 is no exception. Amon is such an intense, intimidating villain. When you first see him, he's a non-bender who can take bending away from people permanently. Then you later learn that his name is Noatak. He is from the Northern Water Tribe. If I remember right, it was Northern Water Tribe. And he uses blood bending to do it. And he can do it without even using a muscle. He's just psychically able to blood bend. It's just scary. And him being the brother of Tarlok was a great twist that honestly I didn't see coming when watching the show, and it actually made sense. And then the last big pro I'm going to kind of leave here that I wanted to at least make a note about is just that the concept of pro bending was such a cool idea, and I'd love to see more of that in the future. Like maybe like there's a a book that we can buy in our world that takes place in the Avatar universe as a like rule set, like the rule book to pro bending, and you can actually learn how this stuff works. You can see brackets and stuff like that, like those like the Avatar's Legacy, the History of the Fire Nation, and the Avatar's Chronicle books that came out. I'll try to put pictures of those covers on the screen so you know which books I'm talking about. Something like that, where it talks about pro bending specifically, I would buy that and love to just take a look through it. And that leads me into my cons. And to be honest, I only really have two big cons with season 1 of Korra. And number one is, I think one that a lot of people share with me, in the fact that Toph growing up and becoming a police chief never sat right with me. Like, it seemed out of character. Somebody who didn't care about the rules, who wanted just to hold her own weight and just do what she wanted, becoming a police chief and then trying to get into other people's business and worry about that, like, it just felt so out of place for a character like Toph. And the only other one is with Korra essentially being like a 4-year-old, but already knowing she's the Avatar and able to bend 3 of the 4 elements before she's even, it's like, whatever happened to avatars not knowing they're the Avatar until they're 16 years old, like Roku or Kuruk, or Yang Chen? Like, with those avatars, they found out at 16. Kyoshi was a different story. We don't have to talk about Kyoshi. Is it just a better plot, like better for the story if they don't find out at 16? Then why have that be a rule? Why make 2 shows where, I get why Aang was told early, because it made the weight of being the Avatar much more important to him, and it created a sense of dread with him finding out he's the Avatar too young, but it was necessary for him to find out. With Korra, it's just like she was just naturally able to bend earth and fire as a waterbender, and just like, I'm the Avatar, you gotta deal with it. I love the attitude. I think it's entertaining. Though having it be 2 avatars in a row, I felt like it was a bit, I was starting to question why that was even a rule to begin with. So when ranking Legend of Korra Season 1 Air, I'm going to give it the solid ranking of B+. And so it's going in last place, but like, it is still a great season, and B+ is nothing to sneeze at. It's a great season. Now, going into Book 2, Spirits of the Legend of Korra, this is a bit of a polarizing season. I'm not going to lie. A lot of high highs and a lot of low lows. And so starting out with those highs, as I normally have been doing, the Avatar 1 2-part like Genesis introductions, the first ever Avatar, kind of right there in the middle of season 1, is 2 of the best episodes in Avatar, period. Like, that story of Avatar 1, how the Avatar actually came to be with the spirit of Rava and Vatu going at it, and how he gets in front of, like, gets in the middle of it. It's such an interesting story, and it was so brilliantly told, and I loved every second of it. One thing I really want to see, as many other Avatar fans do, we want like a book, we want a comic, we want something that talks about the second Avatar, where there's never been an Avatar really before. Like, yeah, sure, Wan existed, but Wan died. Shouldn't there no longer be someone who bends all four elements, and suddenly someone does? And not only does someone bend four elements, but there's a voice in his head that is a dead person. Like, that would be such, assuming that, I'm assuming that the next Avatar is a him, it could be a her. But like, that story of the second Avatar would be so interesting. As a side note, just I wanted to mention that. But moving into my next pro of book 2 is that the finale was so great. It's probably arguably the most entertaining finale of any of the seasons outside of book 3 Fire of Avatar. Like, it is just a great. Now with the cons, honestly, other than Avatar 1, this season can get pretty forgettable at times. I'm not really caring about the triple threats arcs with Mako and Asami, and Bolin being essentially a movie, or as they call it, a mover star. I'm like, this is boring and unnecessary. And so honestly, when I'm rewatching Legend of Korra, season 2 can become kind of a drag to get through. The only benefit is compared to Avatar, these seasons are only 13 episodes long, and they move a bit quicker in terms of actually being physically short, actually being shorter. But I mean, when the episodes aren't as interesting, it's harder to watch. So season 2, it gets pretty forgettable in that point. And the only other note I'd say, and I'm still torn on it, so I'm putting it as a con, but I'm kind of in the middle on it. It's that Korra losing her connections to the past avatars, I think, is a bit drastic of a punishment or a thing to move forward with for Korra, because I thought it'd be so cool to hear more wisdom from like Aang and hear her talk to Roku. Like, what would Korra and Roku's conversations look like? What would Korra and Kiyoshi's conversations look like? Like, those are things I wanted to see too. I know we got a lot of Roku and some Kyoshi and all these other avatars in Legend and Avatar, but I still would have loved to see Korra's completely different personality interact with these avatars, and have Korra talk to Aang more. She only talks to Aang like twice, maybe. I don't know if I still don't like that change as a fan, but I commend the writers for not trying to back out of it or write her back into being able to do it. I commend them for sticking with that decision. Now, going into my ranking for season 2, Spirits of Legend of Korra, I'm going to give this one a C+, to be honest. It's good. I mean, it's Avatar or Korra. It's gonna be a good season. It's kind of like Attack of the Clones. It's like the Attack of the Clones of Avatar, as Attack of the Clones is Star Wars. It's like Attack of the Clones is a good movie, but it's slow, and the finale is fantastic. And after you get to the finale, things just get nothing but better. And especially going into the next season, which is now with Legend of Korra season 3 or book 3 Change. This is peak Avatar, like up there with book 3 Fire. For some reason, when Michael Dante DiMartino, Brian Konietzko, when these writers get to a season 3 of a show, it is going to be a banger. Like, this is a great season. Zahir and the Red Lotus, I would argue, are the best villains in Avatar, period. I know what I said. They are intimidating, but they're also funny. Like, look at the Bolin Mako conversation between those two and Ghazan and Minghua. Like, that conversation when they're in the truck and Minghua saying like, oh, I had to, think up stories of the guards, who was dating who was having who was having troubles at home. Like, I had to do all that stuff for 13 years just to stay sane. And Bolin tries it, and he's like, and then he guesses like 3 things, and Ghazan just sits there. 2 out of 3, not bad. Or something, or 3 out of 4. He says something like that. Not bad. It's just like, it's so funny. And Ghazan as a villain was just so entertaining. as anybody who's watched this show with me has heard me say, Gazan is just a bro, man. Like he is just I love the character of Gazan, even though like he's a menacing villain. He's still just he's got a lot of personality. He doesn't speak very much, but when he does, it's you remember it. And then part two that I really like about book three is that seeing the air nomads come back. And it was just such a cool thing to actually see an in present time group of airbenders. The first time airbenders have really been seen together in like 170 years that weren't related to Aang. It's been like 170 years. 170 years ago from today, guys, was the 1850s. Think about that for a second. 1854 was 170 years ago today. It's like not seeing, a skill set in 170 years. And suddenly like, there's a whole group of people who have this skill. It's so cool. And my last big thing is Zhao Fu and Su Yin are such amazing inclusions to the team of heroes in the world of Avatar itself. I thought that Zhao Fu and Su Yin were just great characters, and plus the minor villain of Ai Wei was so intimidating. Like seeing a truth seeker, I think is what they called him, but like a lie detector, be a villain. Like it's a bit predictable when you're watching it, but it's still so good. I'm gonna go ahead and go right into my cons, and they're really nitpicks here. And the first one is Zahir seems to just already be great at being an airbender despite being a non-bender his whole life. Like I do get that he has studied the air nomad culture and all these concepts and philosophies of freedom and anarchy and all these things. So therefore he likely does have a set of talents and pre-inhibitions. I forget I don't know what the word is, but he has an advantage to everybody else to being a good airbender, but he seems like he gets it pretty dang quickly. And the only other one is, like, it's really a question, and that is, are the TLA ever not corrupt? Like, you'd think that with Earth King Kui, the Earth King from the Avatar Last Airbender timeline, back, with Aang and all of them, like, you think that he would have, like, dissolved the TLA, or with getting rid of Long Feng, that everything would have, like, switched up, or, a big change would have happened, but with the new Earth Queen, the TLA are the same as before. Like, are the TLA ever, like, seriously, are they ever not corrupt? Now, going into ranking book 3 change, I have to give it, like, if there was a place between A and A+, it would go here. Like, honestly, I might give it an A+. It's right there, A or A+. I can't decide whether to give it an A or an A+. It's right up there with books 2 and 3 of Avatar. Like, it is peak. Like, not a bad episode in the season. It is fantastic. Which now leads us into book 4, Balance of Legend of Korra. We get a 4-year time jump. Now, our Team Avatar are all, I believe they're all in their 20s now. And now you have Kuvira. And she is an underrated villain. I mean, it's very, I'm not going to say the name explicitly, but it's very obvious who Kuvira is, and like supposed to be emulating from real life. And it's honestly on my most recent rewatch of Legend of Korra, she's a lot more intimidating as a villain than I remembered my first couple watches of the show. Like, she is a really great villain, and she's very intimidating. And this is honestly, arguably, the best version of Korra that we ever see, is her going through the beginning where she still has a bit of that poison from Zahir inside of her. And she runs into Toph. Now, this Toph, this like old as dirt Toph, is what I expected of Toph in Legend of Korra. Like I said that with book 1 that she should never have been a police chief. I stand by that. But this version of Toph is perfect, and she was amazing. And seeing Korra go from, being helpless in the beginning to going to Toph and getting her butt kicked and getting the rest of the poison pulled out of her, to go up against Kuvira but try to be peaceful about it, something she's never really done before, and then lose to Kuvira, and then have to work her ass off to try to save the rest of, Republic City towards the end and save who she can. The finale is honestly really great. And I mean, the last thing I'll mention here as a positive is the shift of writing the characters of Varric and Julie. Like, Julie is amazingly well written from this point on. If you've ever read the comics as well, you'll find out that Julie actually becomes president of Republic City after President Raiko is kicked out of office because he surrendered to Gravira. Julie takes over and becomes the next president of Republic City, with, of course, also, of course, being married to Varric, as we see at the end of book 4. And so I think that was just a fun little extra piece of information I'll give you guys. And going into the cons of season 4 is that it's a bit slow in the start. They're trying to set it up that, it's been a few years, our characters are all in different places. Bolin is working with Kuvira, he's dating Opal, and then of course they're having troubles. You learn that Kai and Jinora are dating, but they're doing well. But then you have, of course, Mako working for, newly appointed or about to be appointed King Wu, and who's I'll get to in a minute. And then, of course, Asami is leading Future Industries, while her father is still in prison for, being a member of the Equalists in season 1. But you also have, going into Prince Wu, and my biggest gripe with Wu is that he starts off extremely annoying. He is hard to watch at times. He's a young man acting like a toddler, throwing a tantrum every other scene. And the only thing is that he only becomes tolerable at the end. He doesn't become likable, just tolerable. And the only other thing I'll say is that Pacific Rim styled mech suit that Kuvira builds her ultimate weapon, it just seems a bit out of place for an Avatar thing. Like, it's cool. It's cool. It just seems out of place. That leads me into my last ranking here for book 4, Balance. I'm going to give it a solid B. Like, I have my gripes with it, but overall, it is still great. And I still think it's a great season. Honestly, I think books 1 of Korra and Avatar are pretty even, and books 3 are pretty even. 4 and 2 of Korra, of course, are a bit down, but let's go and jump into the rankings and actually talk about that stuff. Working from the bottom to the top, we have in 7th place, Legend of Korra, Book 2, Spirits at a C+ grade. Going into 6th place, I have Legend of Korra, Book 4, Balance with a grading of a B. Going into my 5th place, I have Legend of Korra, Book 1. And I said I gave this one a B+. Honestly, I have it pretty dang even with my number 4 place, Avatar: Last Airbender, Book 1, Water, which is at an A-. These two are both like right there. I think I just gave one an A- and one a B+, so that way I had one clearly higher than the other. And any given day, I might be swapping these two. Place number 3 and 3rd place on the podium, I have Avatar: Last Airbender, Book 2, Earth, with a rating of an A. And then at number 2, in the silver medal, I'm giving Legend of Korra, Book 3, Change. And finally, at number 1, I think we all saw this coming, it's Book 3, Fire, at an A+. And so there's my ranking. There's my opinions on every season of Avatar. And yeah, comment below, what's your ranking? What's your favorite season of Avatar or Korra? And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. So until then, you all have a very lovely day.